Who's saying no to BC jobs and resource development, not Labour?
My union has a proud history of working with First Nations group, and it's a great opportunity for them, and it's a great opportunity for my union.
Not First Nations.
We gotta have a future for these young guys. That's why I'm pushing for this new prosperity.
So what are British Columbians saying?
The resource sector is what keeps BC's economy going.
Better paying jobs and long-term jobs. That's what I'm looking at. And it's going to be good for our young people.
Does BC benefit from a growing resource economy?
It's a simple answer, yes.
Hello, I'm Anthony Furey in for Ezra. Thanks so much for joining us. Here's your Christmas present from Liberal leader Justin Trudeau. If elected Prime Minister, he is going to unmuzzle bureaucrats, politicians, and cabinet ministers. He is going to set politics in Canada free. That's what he told the Canadian press the other day in a year-end interview. Trudeau claims this would be in contrast to Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who does not like the open communication, we are told. A muzzler if ever there was one. Trudeau says a free and informed press, it's an essential part of any informed democracy, making sure citizens know what's going on and are able to hold their leaders to account. Fair enough. I think it's fair to say the Prime Minister isn't a gushing, chatty guy. But I gotta be honest, when I saw the headline, Trudeau promises to unmuzzle everyone, I didn't think it was going to be a story about Harper. I thought it was going to be about Trudeau's own muzzling issues. Because if you believe the popular narrative that Harper is a control freak, that's the phrase that everyone likes to use, and there seems to be some degree of truth to that, well then you've got to in turn admit that, look, Trudeau, he doesn't chalk up so well on that front either. I mean, despite repeated attempts from all media outlets this year, Trudeau has not really discussed substantial policy ideas. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, but he criticizes everyone and then doesn't respond with the goods himself. He's also turfed all senators from his caucus and also said everyone must hold an identical view to him on abortion matters. Now that last one is strange mostly because parties traditionally have not whipped votes on such social matters. So again, the headline made me think Trudeau was fessing up to say, okay, I'm gonna unmuzzle my own people. Another bad mark against him. Right now, there are two legal concerns floating over him, from Christine Ennis and from David Birchie. They're two well-known Liberals who were blocked by the mysterious Green Light Committee from running in so-called open nominations. All right, let's be honest. This is clearly a red light committee, not a green light committee. Its main purpose is to step in to stop people from running in an open nomination. So it's an open nomination process, unless you're blocked by the Red Light Committee, meaning it's not an open nomination process. If Harper was doing this Orwellian shtick, the hounds would be all over him. Now think whatever bad thoughts you want about Harper, the guy isn't perfect, but Trudeau is guilty of the same things he accuses the Prime Minister of doing. And he ain't even Prime Minister yet. No wonder his stock is right now falling and he's losing his commanding grip in the polls. So Trudeau has from now until October to prove he does have his own ideas and he's not afraid of candidates who aren't just yes men. Can he do it? Send me your feedback, anthony.furey@sunmedia.ca.
I have made it clear that future candidates need to be completely understanding that they will be expected to vote pro-choice on any bills. That is part of the screening process. That's part of the green light process. We check on a number of issues. How do you feel about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? How do you feel about same-sex marriage? How do you feel about pro-choice? Where are you on that? And we make sure that the people who are stepping forward are consistent with the Liberal Party as it is now, as it stands under my leadership.
We're going to head to the top story of the day. Luca Magnotta found guilty of all charges. But first, Michael Diamond joining me now in studio to discuss the matter with Justin Trudeau there. What is the matter? What do you think about my opening comments?
You know, I think it's a great point. You know, if Justin Trudeau actually wants to unmuzzle elected officials in Ottawa, he could start by not having a litmus test for potential Liberal candidates to have to line up with him on policy matters. Really, if members of Parliament, Justin Trudeau claims to support the Reform Act to give members of Parliament more freedom to represent their constituents. If he actually doesn't hold those views, what's he actually talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, I just found the whole story weird because I genuinely thought the headline was going to be talking about him telling people what they can and can't do in this green light, red light committee. The Harper stuff, I mean, there's, you know, bad things out there that people say about him and the controlling stuff. That hasn't been in the news recently. It's the Trudeau stuff that's been in the news. And I found it odd the Canadian press story just didn't acknowledge that glaringly obvious angle to me.
Well, and let's also look at the angle about the, you know, talking in an open press and talking with the media. I mean, it was Justin Trudeau's party that decided not to talk to certain members of the parliamentary press gallery,
Right.
which is obviously very important, and politicians shouldn't have that option. It's the people's press gallery, so that's very important. And his last thing about, you know, unmuzzling bureaucrats should be incredibly concerning because bureaucrats are there to implement the government policy of the day, not comment and reflect to the media on it.
And the top news of the day, Michael Diamond, is that Luca Magnotta has been found guilty by a jury of 5 charges. That is for the first-degree murder, killing and dismemberment in 2012 of Chinese exchange student Jun Lin. 4 other charges he has been found guilty of: criminally harassing the Prime Minister and other MPs, mailing obscene and indecent material, committing an indignity to a body, and publishing obscene materials. It was the 8th day of jury deliberations, in which we heard that this morning at 11:20 Eastern Time. Michael, I'm going to play a clip here from someone involved in that process, and then we will discuss further.
He was obviously very adamant and very clear in that email that he would take his anger on humans after having killed cats and after having made cat videos, about 3 of them, and then he was going to step up. So, and that's what obviously he did.
So, Michael, the reason I like that clip is because he's saying, look, this guy sent out the email saying, I've done this cat thing and I'm going to switch over to doing it to people. And Magnotta's only real defense of getting off free on this, or not as severe, was not criminally responsible. Hey, I'm crazy, wasn't in a sound frame of mind, had a psychotic episode when I did this killing. What sort of message do you think the jury sent?
You know, I think the jury sent a very good message that, you know, there are consequences, obviously, these sorts of very gruesome and awful crimes. It was also good, though, that, you know, 8 days seems like a long time for something that for most of us is clear cut, but they clearly did their work and deliberated this very carefully. So there can really be no criticism of them on this. You know, if they rushed through it, there'd be an opening for criticism, and that was very important to avoid that.
And do you think that the general legal process that unfolded was a good one, a clean one? Because people rightfully have so many criticisms of the Canadian justice system. They don't care about the victims, more about the accused, that justice takes too long to get here. I wouldn't find too much fault. I was frustrated that he went the NCR route because I find it's just this really cheap kind of Hail Mary pass that happens anytime someone does something nutty. Let's be honest, no matter what you do, if you're dismembering a guy, it's nutty. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go to jail for it.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, the defense threw everything at the everything on the kitchen sink at trying to avoid a guilty verdict. But luckily, you know, the jury did the right thing here. And I think it was such a high-profile case and such an odd and interesting case for public attention that I think this will go a long way to restoring a bit of confidence in the judicial system.
Do you think we're going to be remembering this story for just years to come? I mean, to me, this is going to be up there in the Paul Bernardo legacy of crazy Canadian tales, the porn actor component, the salacious details. The fact that this guy was just so obsessed with his own image, all these multiple Facebook or whatever social media accounts that he had set up about himself, trying to create this whole sense of notoriety, and it seems like it was all created by him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is one that Canadians will remember for a long time, and even internationally. We remember he was, sent home from being caught in Germany after he fled the country. So this is, something people are going to remember, and that was unfortunately part of his goal, was to create notoriety, I think.
One thing that was so shocking about this case, that the fact that disturbed me most, isn't the depths of human depravity that we saw in the guilty party here, Magnotta, But that time when shortly after he was picked up, fan pages started emerging online. I remember there was one girl from Central Canada who ended up being profiled in a bit of a piece because she had some I Love Luca or Respecting Luca Magnotta fan page, and they say, oh, it's because he does what he wants, and he's this ballsy guy who wears it on his sleeve. And you think, what is going on? Do you think that we would have seen that at any time? Is that unique to today, to social media? Why did some people in the public get behind that?
When we see this time and again, be it somebody moving from the Midwest to California to marry Charles Manson or Paul Bernardo. I mean, these people who do these spectacularly gruesome crimes get a following because these people who want to attach themselves to want to also become notable.
It is just such a shocking story, and not Canadians, the world, everyone in the world was really following this case day by day, and you wonder at first, is he going to strike again? It's that gray area period. I mean, unfortunately, we had it during the Ottawa shooting period where you go, I don't know what's going on right now, and you're trying to get a grip on reality and hope nothing happens again. When we found out that there'd been the mailing of those, whatever they were, that was mailed to the Prime Minister and other locations. Do you find that the law enforcement process, we talked about the legal process, but the law enforcement process was strong and rigorous here?
Well, look, I mean, it took not all that long, considering he fled the country, to bring him back. I mean, it was obviously a lengthy process to get him to trial, but I think, under the circumstances, it all worked out well. And I think, again, with the verdict and bringing this man to justice is going to do a lot to restore some confidence to Canadians.
I remember talking on these programs back in 2012 when all this first happened about what potentially caused this. Was it just one person's wackiness or something in society? I hated the Marilyn Manson caused the Columbine shootings conversation. Thought that was ridiculous. Is there anything different about society now that makes this Luca Magnotta thing possible? I do think the whole fame whore culture is partly to play, but then again, you had celebrity glossy magazines since the 1930s, so I don't know if I'd want to exculpate him on those grounds.
Oh, of course, it might be easier today to create notoriety for oneself, but we've had terrible and sick people doing gruesome acts for a very, very long time. So to blame it on anyone or any one thing but the perpetrator of this crime would be a mistake and a cop-out, really.
Terrible and sick is right. It's one of those cases that it's the car wreck where you don't want to stare, but you just can't look away. And we have since 2012 now. Hopefully we're seeing this in the rearview mirror, although I'm sure there'll be books and TV movies and all that to come. So he's not out of our consciousness yet.
No, and hopefully, we'll remember this and continue to look at movies or books that come out, but hopefully we'll never see something quite like this again.
Michael Diamond, thanks very much for joining us, and at least this is a good news story in that there has been justice. No cheap ways out from the Canadian justice system this time, folks.